Good evening. Thank you for joining us as we come back to open session. As the first item, would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Someday.
Thank you, and we will now move to roll call, and we will start with Ms. Mayo.
Here.
Ms. Durkee.
Here.
Ms. Mason.
Here.
Ms. Cowan.
Here.
And Mr. Lawrence is also here. And so with that, the update from closed session was that the board received an update from regarding negotiations from Dr. Martinez and Mr. Alvarado. And now, our favorite part of the evening, we have our student reports. So, person, come on up, please.
Okay.
You can come right up here, and let's make sure you get the microphone on.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Good evening, Dr. Martinez and the members of the school board. My name is Kira Darner, and I'm a junior at Prospect High School. When I first started Prospect, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do career-wise. Our counselor, Kim Hendrick, would meet with me and ask me what my future plans were. It made me feel like Kim and the other staff at Prospect cared about my future. Smaller classes are better for me because I am less distracted. Teachers actually care about us doing our work and improving, and they also care about us personally. Freshman year was really challenging for me. I went to Mount Diablo High School. I just felt very pressured, and I almost felt like I should quit trying. When I moved to Horizons Independent Study Center halfway through my freshman year, I noticed that I started to improve. I started catching up and I needed more help, so that's when I moved to Prospect to get more time with the teachers. This year, I'm getting all A's and B's in my classes and I'm on track to graduate. I want to finish my diploma at Prospect High School and become an esthetician, and I hope to eventually start an organic cosmetics company. And I like having a variety of opportunities in smaller classes at Prospect, and I enjoy trying new things and learning to reach my goals. Thank you for this opportunity, and good evening.
I'm glad you didn't quit, and congratulations on your success. Do we have other student rep reports? Proud members of the audience. All right. So with that, we'll move along to public comment. So the public may address the board regarding any item within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education of MDUSD that is not on this agenda. These presentations are limited to 3 minutes each, or a total of 30 minutes for all speakers, or the 3 minute limit may be shortened. If there are multiple speakers on any one subject, the public comment period may be moved to the end of the meeting. Speakers are not allowed to yield their time. And then as one side note, due to the Brown Act, the board is able to hear from the public, but we are not able to respond or engage in any sort of dialogue. At most, what we may be able to do is either ask a clarifying question or direct any speakers towards staff to follow up. So with that.
Just make sure she wants public comment.
Okay. Lourdes, so a quick question is for Lourdes Beleche. We have you for 2.1, but is it actually 9.1 for public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, it is 9.1.
Okay, please come on up.
Buenas noches, Superintendente Martínez, miembros de la mesa directiva y a todos los presentes. Estoy frente a ustedes esta noche porque me preocupan unos comentarios que leí sobre los cortes que están por venir a través del distrito. Durante los últimos 23 años he trabajado en el distrito de Monte Diablo porque mi sueño era servir a mi comunidad. Soy inmigrante, hija de un bracero y una ama de casa. Mi madre me enseñó a temprana edad que la educación es esencial para un buen futuro. Por igual, ella me inculcó la importancia de ser bilingüe. Toda mi vida la escuché decir, una persona bilingüe vale por dos, y le creí. Desafortunadamente, el resumen que se nos compartió hoy acerca de los recortes que se deben hacer me ha mostrado lo contrario. En vez de sentir que valgo por dos, siento que mi presencia en este distrito y la de los demás administradores y maestros bilingües no es valorada. Ser bilingüe aquí no vale por dos. Por lo visto, no vale nada. Les comunico este pensamiento en español porque quiero, y más que nada porque como un producto de un programa de doble inmersión, lo puedo hacer. I was moved by the information shared with us this afternoon via email from the Office of the Superintendent. I appreciate you keeping us informed. However, I am concerned about the thoughts that were expressed in the feedback. I began my career in Mount Diablo 23 years ago as an assistant in the English Learner Department. I was recruited to teach in a bilingual classroom at Cambridge Elementary for the fall of 1997. I enjoyed the few years spent developing children's academic and language skills in English and Spanish. Unfortunately, that program was short-lived at our site given the lack of support coming top-down. Fast forward 20 years, the comments made from our education community share the same sentiments as they did back then. As a bilingual educator turned administrator in Mount Diablo, I feel undervalued and unappreciated. I was hired as principal at Cambridge Elementary because of my ability to communicate with families, for my vision in leading the staff to meet the needs of our underserved students of color, and for my ganas to make a difference in the lives of our future leaders. How will our students have a chance to enter the race in a competitive market when we close doors to essentials like bilingualism and biculturalism? One disservice after another. By allowing comments that devalue bilingualism, we continue to marginalize students of color and perpetuate the institutionalized racism and oppression of the students we serve in our dual language programs. By the way, I began my comments by speaking in Spanish because I wanted to, but more importantly, as a product of a dual immersion program, I can.
Our next speaker is Sylvia Orellana.
Buenas noches, dear board members, Superintendent Martinez, audience. I am here to speak to you about the importance of bilingual education. Our district has been moving forward with having a bilingual program of quality. And I'm happy to say this is the only academic program that is serving our students in the way that we should, because we have three main goals to support our students who are emerging bilinguals. Our goals are to have high academic achievement, foster bilingualism and biliteracy, and work on social cultural competence. Given that these are the three goals of bilingual education, I don't need to tell you how important it is to continue a program like this. This is not a tier 4 program. This is not a nice to have program. This is an essential, this is a must do that we must continue in our district. I'm sorry, my voice is trembling with courage, but it's also trembling because I'm disappointed. When I saw the list that the bilingual education programs are a nice to have program after so many years of working on this. And I'm not sure if you know this, and forgive me for not knowing, but bilingual education is a growing movement across California, across the nation, and across the globe. We need this program to help our students be citizens of the world, not just citizens of California. So I beg you to please continue to research and learn about the importance of bilingual education. Our kids deserve this, and they deserve the best. And the bilingual program is the best and the only academic program that we have to serve our students. Thank you.
Christensen, please.
Good evening. I'm here because I heard one of the board members said last time you met that librarians were possibly a cut that should be made for the budget. And I want you to know how much I disagree with that as a parent and as a teacher. Librarians are incredibly important to classroom teachers as support, as are vice principals and counselors. Anyone that works directly with students is important. And if you're going to look to make cuts, please look outside of the people that work directly with students. But just look at any of the research on what librarians do for academics and socially making the kids have a place where they can go. And you will see why it's important for them not to be cut from our budget. Thank you.
Linda Ortega, followed by Alyssa Warrens.
Good evening, President Lawrence, school board members, Dr. Martinez, and members of the audience. My name is Linda Ortega, and I am the Vice President of Medea. I am here tonight because I am concerned about the cuts and the impact of the budget of our schools, the budget cuts at our schools. Last year, due to layoffs, many of our teachers had to be involuntary transferred. Many of them were from Title I schools, and I know from talking to them and attending the meetings, they did not want to leave. And now, when school started this last fall, we had classrooms full of overages, students who had to crowd in rooms of 40, 42, teachers scrambling to get desks, books, tables, janitors trying to scramble to make sure that first day of school is perfect, because as a teacher we all want that for our students. And now almost a half of the school year has been gone by, and still some of those school sites are still with overages. Still students are coming, and what kind of a welcome are they getting? You are one of 42, you're one of 45. Where is that individualism coming? How is that teacher going to make that connection with that student? So as you sit there, and I know you're making those decisions where to make cuts, what I'm asking you is please do not repeat what happened last school year. Our students deserve better. And finally, please be mindful of keeping your budget cuts far, far away from our schools, from our students, and the needs of those that we need, that we need to show that Mount Diablo is a caring district. Thank you.
And then Tammy Kerr after the
Dr. Martinez, board, first let me say that I appreciate your sending out the survey to try and find a solution to the issues you have surrounding our current financial position. But I am here to urge you once again to keep these cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. I say again because almost a year ago I stood in this room and asked you to do the same thing. Last year we were told that the district didn't have adequate funds and would need to make cuts. We saw PowerPoints showing us over and over how we just didn't have any money and how the enrollment would be dropping so much that we wouldn't need to have the amount of teachers we currently employed. And I pleaded with you then to not cut teachers, to look elsewhere to find money, because we knew while we may have some drop in enrollment, it wouldn't warrant the cuts proposed. Unfortunately, these pleas fell on deaf ears and cuts were made. And while somehow almost all of those pink slips were rescinded, we still lost talented teachers because they were quickly picked up by other districts. And then we started school this year in utter chaos. Kids were packed into classrooms like sardines. They endured classroom and schedule changes for several weeks as administrators scrambled to find a way to make things work. And still halfway through the school year, we have overcrowding and at our neediest schools. Where is the equity? How are we meeting students' needs when we have shoved 44 students into a middle school math class and only now decided we should look for another teacher? And yet here I stand because this district is ready to do it again. You tell us that students are your priority, but how many district management jobs were cut last year? Did you even look to see if cuts could be made there, far away from the classroom? And now, as I read my Friday letter, all I see are new district management hires or final interviews for them. If we are in such dire financial straits, why are we hiring another assistant superintendent? Why are we hiring a risk assessment manager? Sadly, I've heard this before in another district. We were put on a pay freeze and told due to the recession that our district had no money and they needed us teachers to do more with less, to keep our students first. And yet in that same year, our superintendent created 6 assistant superintendent positions, each with high 6-figure salaries, then went on to cut 600 teachers that year because we just didn't have the money. We need to cut anything that is not essential, and that may include programs like AVID, IB, iReady. Are they great programs? Maybe, but if we can't afford teachers to implement them, what good will they do us? And to Ms. Mason, who flippantly offered up the teacher librarians, I would ask if you even know what we do. I've stood before you all on several occasions and shown you how credentialed teacher librarians positively affect students. It's like going to a hospital for neurosurgery and then being told that the hospital is having financial problems and decided to replace all the doctors with nurses. Do nurses have medical training? Yes, but do they have the specialized training needed to operate as a neurosurgeon? Library techs may have had some library training, but they do not have the specialized training needed to run a library and to teach the library curriculum as we do. Please do not repeat the mistakes of last year. If you truly want to keep our students a priority, keep these cuts away from the classroom and those who directly impact students every day. Thank you.
It pained me to say it, but we were looking at many different things.
Tammy Kerr and then Laurel Burns.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Kerr and I am an English teacher at Concord High School. I teach freshmen and seniors and sheltered English to EL students. I am here in support of our librarians, our wonderful credentialed librarians, and in particular my librarian Rachel Knighton. I'm doing some new curriculum this year with my freshmen because I wanted to get them to be engaged readers and not compliant readers, reading for the sake of reading and finding the joy in reading and in books. And I could not have done it without my librarian, without Rachel. I went to her with my ideas and what I wanted to do, and she helped me make it a reality. My students this year started by reading individual books that she helped them choose, books that they wanted to read, that they would engage in every day. We moved into book clubs. She set everything up for me. I could not have done it without her. My students worked in book clubs. She had this beautiful book tasting that she arranged for them. I know she does the same thing at El Dorado. She had it all set up with music and themes, and the kids were really excited just about the book tasting. And then they got their books. And when I walk around the room and I listen to my students in their book clubs and the discussions that they have, there are days where it really does bring tears to my eyes because I can't believe that they are engaged in this way, and it really is due to Rachel's knowledge, her expertise, and the way that she was able to help me. The really wonderful thing, I started this on my own. Other teachers kind of heard about it. Now there are 4 of us freshman English teachers. We are all doing book clubs that Rachel has arranged for us. We have grand plans for what we want to do next year. And we won't be able to do it in the way that it needs to be done if she's not there. As a matter of fact, I need her there every day. 2 days a week is not enough because when my students finish one book, they want to get another one, and I have to say, you have to wait till Thursday or Friday so that I can get you in there. We cannot do without our librarians. They are a partner, an equal partner, and I can't teach the way I want to teach if I don't have her there with me every single day. So please, I'm asking you to really, really keep our librarians. They are an integral part of what we do every day. Thank you.
Laurel Burns, followed by Ruth Schmati.
Good evening, Dr. Martinez and board members. My name is Laurel Burns. I've been a library teacher in this district for 22 years, and I love my job. The teacher librarians would like to address comments that were made at last week's board meeting. They've already been mentioned. Over the course of the latest negotiations, Our teacher librarians addressed the board several times, reminding you that our program was severely cut in 2008, and here we are in 2020 still unrestored. We have continually requested that the board open our school libraries 5 days a week and employ a full-time credentialed teacher librarian at each site. Based on what was said at the February 3rd meeting, we feel that perhaps you have misinterpreted our request. Replacing credentialed librarians with classified staff simply to have libraries open more often is not what's best for the kids. Qualified school librarians are trained to help students navigate information. Evaluating the authority and accuracy of information is an essential part of citizenship, and we are uniquely qualified in this area. If MDUSD wants to make cuts away from direct instruction, eliminating teacher librarians is not the way to go. Please do what's best for our students. Thank you.
Diana Connor will be next.
Good evening, Dr. Martinez and members of the board. My name is Ruth Shoemake, and I first started with the Mount Diablo Unified School District in the 1989-90 school year as a teacher librarian. To work in the Mount Diablo Unified School District as a teacher librarian, I am required by the California Education Code to have a bachelor's degree and a secondary or multiple subject teaching credential. I'm also required to hold a library services credential, which currently requires 31 units at San Jose State University. Library techs are not credentialed and therefore do not meet the requirements set forth in the Ed Code to supervise and teach students. I manage 3 middle school libraries and the College Park High School Library. Because the College Park Library is open 2 days a week, I have an extra day to provide equitable learning opportunities for all of the students. Because I'm a credentialed teacher librarian, students have access to a curated book collection and databases. Students receive instruction in accessing information and credible sources, evaluating, using, and integrating information. Because I am a credentialed librarian, I'm able to support and collaborate with teachers to plan lessons and teach research techniques tailored to class needs. I also conduct book tastings, a fun way to get students excited about reading. Because College Park has a credentialed librarian that leads beyond the library, our students have been able to participate in Poetry Out Loud, a national poetry recitation contest sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation. For some students, this has been the first time they have had the opportunity to participate in public speaking, a valuable leadership skill. As a credentialed librarian, I empower students as creators. I was able to write a grant and receive funding for a 3D printer that all students at College Park are able to use regardless of being enrolled in a computer class or being on the robotics team. Because I am a credentialed librarian, I am helping College Park students transition to college. I make arrangements for seniors that will be attending DVC after they graduate to participate in an annual field trip to the DVC campus for a library tour and research workshop. As a credentialed librarian, I am able to demonstrate new educational technology and help integrate it into the classroom. Only teacher librarians are credentialed to teach digital literacy, information literacy, and digital citizenship, all important subjects in this current atmosphere of misinformation. So much is at stake. The success of our students depends on their ability to read. All students need access to reading material to build their reading skills necessary for them to gather information and learn. For students to be college and career ready, they must be able to use a library and do research well. Do not fail our students by not providing them with the tools they need, especially a credentialed teacher librarian. Do not cut the library program. Please do the right thing. Open up the secondary libraries every day, staffed with credentialed teacher librarians.
Diana Connor, followed by Victor Umana. Diana Connor. Okay. Victor, please come on up.
Good evening, Dr. Martinez and the board. My name is Victor Umana. I'm a proud parent of a daughter that goes to Mount Diablo High School, and she's a freshman. And please forgive me, I found out about this meeting 30 minutes before it started, so I don't have a prepared speech. What I'd like to address is the inequality of the athletic fields at Mount Diablo, and they're in very, very, very much shambles in comparison to the other schools in the school district. I'd like to address particularly the softball fields at this moment where there's too much to address. My daughter will be playing softball. On October 16th of the beginning of the school year, I addressed a Title IX and ADA complaint to Mr. Jimenez at the district. He's listed on the website as the Title IX coordinator, or whatever you want to call it. Nothing has happened since I sent the letter or the email. He responded to me the first day that I sent the email. He called me and said he'll forward it to the high school. High school has done what they can do, but basically it's tied up. They have done a little work starting in the beginning of the year. Today is the first day that the girls can actually practice softball. They can't do it at Mount Diablo. It's an embarrassment, it's a shame, it's a danger. As you can tell, I'm physically disabled. I plan to assist in coaching the team, but anybody with any kind of disability will not be able to even basically show up to the games, support the girls. It is unfortunately a total embarrassment to not only to the school, but to the school district. And I'm requesting that somebody wake up at the district to start getting these girls prepared for not only this season, but for the future. I'm not fighting for just my daughter, but I'm fighting for all the girls at Mount Diablo High School, as well as the other high schools, because girls are important, they mean something, and seeing these fields comparison to the team in the boys sports is a shame. There's no equality whatsoever, and somebody just needs to wake up and take care of our children. Thank you.
Dr. Martinez, could I ask that you and Mr. Jimenez make sure we follow up on that? Thank you. Andrea Ledema? Ledesma. My apologies.
Okay. Sorry. Good evening, board members. My name is Andrea Ledesma. I teach Meadow Homes Kinder. And today was a professional development day for us with Dr. Jose Medina. And being in this bilingual program since the school year of August 2017 till now, I've never really felt that I had the right tools to reach all my students. Yes, I could speak Spanish. Yes, I can read, I can write, I can communicate with the parents. I can do whatever I felt that was necessary to reach them. But as all good educators know, there's always room for improvement. There's always new stuff to learn. There's always stuff out there to equip your bag, to equip your arsenal, to you can make sure that you're doing everything. So when you go home, you know, okay, I reached him on this one theme. Yes, that's a plus. All right, we're on the right move. And today was that day for me. Teaching kindergarten, 26 kindergartners, full day is a lot. But now having this wonderful professional development, I can go back tomorrow and go, hell yeah, I'm good. But then I sit here and I hear and I see the bilingual principals, and I guess I'm not supposed to know, but hearing them, it sounds like our program may be facing some cuts. I'm just speculating just based upon what I hear. I could be wrong, but I don't have all the information, so, and just hearing them, I'm a little bit nervous because I hope that is not the message that is being conveyed, but it does sound like that. So I hope that if that is a priority or one of the things that you are considering, please don't, because having a bilingual program to educate our students is phenomenal. Unfortunately, I wasn't a kid who got to go to those programs, so I struggled. Had I been able to have a program like that where I grew up in Sacramento, maybe my outcome would have been different for me. I still came out fine, but it was a very hard struggle. So I hope that's not part of your guys' plan. Like I said, just hearing it just kind of freaked me out a little bit. Also, as a parent of a kid in the school, it's not something I personally want to hear. And then just to hear about cuts all around. Everybody doesn't like it. Nobody likes to go and say, oh my gosh, we have to lose a person. job, anything. I can only imagine what that must feel like. However, looking at, as I said, I'm originally from Sacramento, and looking at the superintendents out in that area, looking at what they make, perks and everything, leads me to wonder, what are the perks, benefits that our superintendent or intendants have? For example, are they eligible for extra pay if they work more than their contracted?
You can finish up your thought.
Okay, thank you. Is he eligible for extra pay if he works more than his contracted X amount of days? Do perks include such as a $12,000 a year toward immunity, a monthly car allowance, or a yearly technology stipend? Are those, if there are such things, are those items that can be looked at as possible cuts before we look at programs or classrooms? That's just a thought, concern. Where could we find public information on that?
So the superintendent's contract is a matter of public record, and
Okay.
so it was on a board agenda, and so you can find it there with all of the caveats, all part of his contract that is public record.
So just Google it?
You could do that, or I'm sure we could have staff follow up.
agendas are all online.
Yeah, the agenda, and I'm sure Dr. Martinez remembers better than I do the date.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay, thank you. And our final public comment from Dan Reynolds.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to start by thanking the board for the action that you took last week in passing a resolution of support for the Schools and Communities First initiative that we are currently collecting signatures to get on the ballot in November. It shows that you know that we need increased funding from the state. The Schools and Communities First Act will bring $18 million a year in ongoing funds to the Mount Diablo Unified School District. On a separate subject, as the board, you are responsible for the budget. We all know how important it is for you all to pay attention to your budget. You are the elected board, you make these decisions. You made these decisions as it related to your 2018-19 budget. You made these decisions as it related to your budget this year, and you will have to be the ones to make these decisions related to next year's budget. The board crafts its budget in July based on projections. The budget that the board approves is oftentimes in our district millions of dollars off every year as it relates to what the district expects as income. The letter that the County Office of Ed sent y'all in December looked at your budget from last July, and the information in that letter did not accurately and fully reflect your financial reality at the time it was sent, and I do not think that it currently reflects the budget reality that we are in now. That letter they sent you contained inaccuracies. I don't imagine they have an accurate sense of your budget currently. It is important for you all to spend the time now to have an accurate budget, and as the board to know what it is as you move forward. You need this accurate budget information. I'll ask you not to just focus on what the county is telling you or your own people are telling you about the future, but you can have a sense of where we are in the budget cycle by looking at past budgets, past interim reports, and past end-of-year actuals, to have a fuller sense of things and to pay attention to your entire budget cycle. You need to have accurate information. There are other things to consider as well. You need accurate enrollment numbers. You need to accurately assign classroom teachers and other education professionals so that we will not have another year like we did this year where there are class overages that students have to suffer with all year long. As you move forward, if you look to make cuts, use reason and direction. Budget with a scalpel, not an axe. Please do what is best for our students, and we know that that means ensuring they have teachers in classrooms, ensuring they have smaller class sizes, not layoffs or class size overages. It means making cuts as far away from students as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. If you need to go for any students or anyone else, thank you. And thank you for coming out for your comments. We will now move along to district organizations, item 10.1. At regular board meetings, a single spokesperson of each recognized district organization may make a brief presentation. Items are limited to those which are informational, and I have Anita Johnson from Medea, please.
I should have gone on number 9. More people would hear me. Good evening. I'm Anita Johnson, President of the Mount Diablo Education Association. I want to thank each of you for the careful attention you pay to all of your work, especially the very difficult decisions regarding budget cuts. Our district is already failing to meet the needs of our students. You heard about all of the needs that are not being met during the last year. And for those of you who have known me longer, you've heard it for longer. Now we need to cut even further because the state is not providing the funding for the services our students need. As you make these decisions, please prioritize direct contact with students. Keep the cuts away from the classrooms, from librarians, and from counselors. Instead, make cuts to programs that need computers, systems, and require employees to spend time meeting with other employees rather than spending time with students. Also, very importantly, be aware that management staffing here at the district office has grown over the last 6 years and has not declined like staffing for other areas. As you eliminate positions, look first to management positions. A district with lower enrollment should be able to function with fewer managers. And I know that the people who are giving you the data are not going to tell you that, but you know that. So all of those cuts may not be sufficient to meet the goals that you have to hit for your cuts. If you must eliminate more teachers, be very, very careful with the classes that are eliminated, and very, like Dan was saying, with a scalpel in terms of what schools and which classes. We are still, right now, at 48 classes in this district that are over their maximum, and it is well over halfway through the school year. We started the year in total chaos, and the problems have not been resolved. We absolutely must avoid the chaos that we felt in the fall. We want to start next year on good footing. Thank you very much.
And with that, we will move along to recognitions and resolutions. And so we have a review and potential approval of Resolution 1920-39, determination of seniority among certificated employees with the same seniority date, also known as the tiebreaker resolution. Do I have a motion on this item?
I'm having computer trouble. Mr. President, I move to approve resolution number 1920-39, determination of seniority among certificated employees with the same seniority date, the tiebreaker resolution.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Durkee, second by Ms. Mason. I'll now call for the vote. Is there any comment or discussion amongst the board? Okay.
Well, I think it's helpful perhaps to have an explanation of this for the public, just so they understand how this works and what this actually means.
Happy to do that. So what this resolution is that in the case that we have any certificated reductions in staff, Again, those reductions are done by seniority area with specific areas of credentials identified. What this particular resolution does is provide a structure for how individuals who may be hired on the same day are compared for the certificates they hold, the credentials they have. It helps us to, again, identify the sequence of individuals who may receive notices if, in fact, we do proceed with certificated layoffs. So it breaks the tie, if you will, of individuals who are hired on the same day by applying a criteria.
So for the public to understand, the seniority is the first step in when we do a layoff procedure. Seniority is the first thing that comes. So when we talk about don't do cuts broadly, but do them with a scalpel, really seniority is the first thing that is looked at when we do layoffs. So we're not actually able to go school by school or program like that in detail. Is that correct?
Yes, it gets more complicated than that. So again, as we get closer to actually approving any resolutions, there are criteria in which you can take a look at that would skip individuals when you actually go through a process of identifying where your reductions would be. This is separate. This gets to the point of when you apply a layoff criteria, and again, you do look to the seniority. If you have individuals who are hired on the same day, you have to have, it's best to have this criteria, which you're approving tonight. The layoff structure can be designed differently, so I don't want to give the false impression, because there are subtleties within that structure that can be made at a later date. This simply is for when you make that decision, individuals hired on the same date, there's criteria to set them in order. All things being equal, then who potentially would receive the notice first when you apply the actual layoff. So I hate to make it sound complicated, but it's actually extremely complicated. Hence, we follow, again, education code through the process of going into a resolution. That's not what we're doing tonight. This is just affirming the tiebreaker criteria if we actually do get to a resolution calling for certificated layoffs.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I just think it's so important for the community to understand what decisions we're making here. So thank you.
All right. And that item passes 5-0. And so we will move along to our next item, which is item 12.1. Review and potential approval of the appointment of Human Resources Administrative Assistant. I will turn to Dr. Martinez prior to taking a motion.
Yes, please, thank you. We are bringing forward an administrative assistant in the Human Resources Department. We have been, in essence, working without an individual who has been formally hired in this position. And again, we're recommending that Sandra Barnhart come into this position as our new administrative assistant. Now, Sandra's been working with the district since February of 2001 as a well-rounded professional, backed by years of experience in a number of departments, including assessment, research and evaluation, instructional support, and educational services. This actually is again, a transfer of her work to another location, but it provides us an opportunity where we won't be backfilling another position that has been in play for a while. So Sandra, of course, we want her to be successful in this particular position, working with our Human Resources Department, bringing her exceptional skills to this side of the department, or another part of our departments.
And do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Sandra Barnhart for the Human Resources Administrative Assistant confidential position.
Second.
Have a first and a second. I'll call for the vote. And that passes 5-0. Congratulations. Feel free to thank anyone.
Thank you for this opportunity to be part of the Human Resource Department.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited about the new challenges that I will face there, and that get to be a part of their team and assist them throughout the rest of this year and on, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. And we'll now move to item 13.1, budget update presentation. Before we start, can I ask, it appears that this is publicly posted, is that correct?
Correct. So it is in a number of locations. It is on the Budget Solutions page on the website. It is attached to the board agenda, and there are copies in the back.
Well, thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
greatly appreciated.
So President Lawrence, members of the board, Superintendent Martinez, members of the superintendent's cabinet, our bargaining group partners that are in the room, members of the public, and those who are watching this via video afterward. This presentation tonight is intended to cover a number of topics. We're going to start with a little bit of the history and some impacts. These are numbers that you've all seen before, but want to make sure that we continue to bring these back. We're going to take a look at the budget calendar as well as some key dates that we have coming our direction. We're going to take a look at the budget reduction strategy and the amount that needs to be reduced. Understand the process of community input moving forward, as well as what's taken place over the course of the last week. Identify suggestions for reductions and identify core or tier areas, if you will, and then we will open it up for board discussion. So to start with, this slide should not be any big surprise. In California, we know that we have been underfunded for probably as long as we've all been alive. And just a quick number here, if California were funded just on the national average, a school of 500 would have approximately $1 million extra. And so when we play that out over the course of all of our schools in the district, you can get an idea as to how high that number is. But what really brings us to this evening's presentation, and the reason that we're talking about budget solutions, is a number of things. First of all, state funding, and I'll go into that a little bit. The California STRS and PERS unfunded contributions, year after year deficit spending, all for really good reasons, but ultimately coming forward to this point. Declining enrollment, other increased expenditures, as well as some board reductions that were approved last year that were not entirely realized. So let's start with CalPERS and CalSTRS. These are the two programs that our employees are part of. STRS is for our certificated employees. That's our teachers, our counselors, our psychologists, all of our administrators. And then CalPERS is really our classified side of the house. And what's important to note here is that as a result of the recession in 2008, the investments that had taken place for both PERS and STRS were unfunded. So what happened was the investments that they had were not able to continue to cover the costs of employees as they retire. And as you can see on the bottom of both of these charts, back in the 2015-16 school year, the district's contribution, as well as the employees' contribution, was right around 10.56%. That has jumped up considerably and will continue to even out at approximately 18.4%. So although the employees continue to pay, the employer share has increased. The same thing has happened for CalSTRS. So you'll see that in 15-16 it was approximately 11.8%, and that number is going to continue to go up all the way through the roughly 2023-24 school year, and maybe a little bit beyond that.
Can I ask a clarifying
Yes.
question? So to look at this for CalSTRS, this is saying that the district's cost per employee, without any more money going into the employee's pocket, has increased by 8% on the STRS side, and by close to 15% on the CalPERS side.
That is correct. That is correct. And what is unable to change is the employee contribution. And this is set in education code, and an employee cannot pay more into the retirement system unless they are getting more out. So that is why that side is fixed, but it really is important for the public to know that all of our employees are contributing to their retirement plans. The next slide here, and I want to note that for those of you that are here in the audience, the numbers that you're seeing on the screen, those that are watching this at some point in time, these numbers are updated. So when we were getting ready for this evening, this is the one slide we did not update, so the number that you see there on the screen is accurate. And what this is showing is, it's showing the difference starting in the 15-16 school year between our revenues and our expenses. And it's important to take a look at those because in 15-16 we were bringing in more, if you will, than it was costing us to run our school district. And over time, that number, those two percentages and those 2 points have really flipped. So what you'll see in the 19-20 school year is a differential of a little more than $37 million. And the reason that these numbers are what they are is because a couple of things that we've taken a look at. First of all, we've included the cost of the Medea tentative agreement as well as the Me Too clause. And so it's important to look at that in the big scheme of things because that tentative agreement will be moving forward in the next few weeks. So what you'll see is you will see the differentials here in front of you. This is also a slide that you've seen before, but it is important to note. Not terribly realistic for most of our districts, but the recommendation by the Governmental Finance Officers Association is that close to 17% is approximately what a school district should have in its reserves. What you'll see is you'll see the most current information that the state has, and that's the 17-18 percentages there of the unrestricted ending fund balance. And what you'll see is that in unified school districts, it's approximately 16.98% across the state. But in all of these categories, those reserves are starting to shrink, which is why you see in that far column the change from prior years. What's then important to take a look at is our numbers here and our unrestricted ending fund balances and the percentages and the changes over time. And what's important is when you take a look at 1920, what you're going to see is that we are very, very close to the 3% that we are required to have, which is our state minimum. We are required to have that 3% set aside in our reserves for a rainy day, for whatever it is that may happen, but it's an amount of money that we are not supposed to be touching. Let's take a look real quickly at statutory COLA, and I forgot to put in here what COLA means, cost of living adjustment, and I will revise this for the future. Right now this is at 2.29%. What's important to note here is that a year ago, when the 1920 budget was sent forward from the governor's office, that predicted a 2021 COLA of 3%. What that means for us here in the district is it's approximately $10.98 million is what we get expected from that COLA. In early January, the number dropped, and we were hearing that it was going to be approximately 1.79%. And the reason we put these numbers here in parentheses is because we want you to see how significant that number is. So all of a sudden going from almost $11 million down to a little over $6 million is pretty significant. We heard the governor's budget message that landed on approximately a 2.29% COLA. We were hearing at the time from the Legislative Analyst's Office that this number might go up. We're not entirely sure, but what we do know is that there's going to be a lot of lobbying at the state level over the course of the next few months until the governor's May revise, the May revisions come forward, and that number has the opportunity to fluctuate just a little bit. What we are currently hearing is that that number could drop below the 2.29%, which would not help in our situation. What's also important to note is the numbers on the bottom. So this statutory COLA, the 2.29%, what it really means is approximately $231 of new money per ADA. It's not our enrollment, but it's the average daily attendance for every child. And in our district, that's about 95%. So we can take our 30,600 students and we multiply that by approximately 95%. It's very precise in the state, but I'm just giving you sort of the high level of it. The challenge is that in order to just cover step and column increases and the increased pension costs to both CalPERS and CalSTRS, that's running about 313, which means per ADA, we are automatically at a deficit of approximately $80 per student just by doing everything the same and rolling some numbers over, which is a decrease there of a little over $2 million.
So can I just say something on that?
Absolutely.
On the COLA? That's something that we've been talking to other school districts in our county and in our state, and the CSBA has been looking at that. When the public hears from the governor that we have the highest education budget ever, this is not what I think the public is aware of. That actually what the state is funding us at is below our actual costs by $2 million just in that one piece of our budget. So
that is correct. It's always the way that you tell the story with the numbers. And while the state budget may have more in it for public education than it ever did before, all of the costs are going up and far exceeding that. So yes, I agree with you. The next slide that we would like to share has to do with special education services. And this is a number that we always need to keep in mind, simply because the most important thing for anybody to know is that special education services are required by federal law, and it's also required that they be 100% covered by the state and the federal government. The challenge is that we have not seen that happening, and so right now the costs that we incur are reimbursed approximately 35 cents on the dollar, which means that every year we contribute to our special education costs. These are very important services that our students need, that they deserve, and that we will cover. It's just that it is unfunded. Do you want to? Okay. We are waiting for some trailer bill language on special education, but right now a piece of that did come in since last week. It had to do with the brand new preschool funding, and it is new funding that can support to expand programs but cannot supplant, which is somewhat of a challenge because we would have liked it to have been the other way around. It would have been nice to get the new money to be able to cover programs that we are already paying for that are unfunded or underfunded, if you will, but that did not happen. Historical attendance. So over the last, our numbers on the bottom go back a little further, just because I think that it's important to note that about the time that the recession hit, we had approximately 4,300 more students than we do now. There's a number of reasons why students are no longer part of the district. I know that this is certainly a question that we're going to be answering in the frequently asked questions. It's going to be part of the website. But if you look at the enrollment over time, what you're seeing some pretty significant drops, especially in particular years. And what we did was we estimated this to be approximately $37 million, and that's sort of an every year realization when we don't have the students present. And the way that we factored that in was it's approximately 3,400 students. We figured that that's about 9,000 students per day based on ADA, and we're using the ADA of students being there approximately 95% of the time. So it gives you an idea as to how much our budget has decreased over time with attendance. Taking a look at the calendar of budget events, these are some of the big items that we have coming forward. So you've got tonight's budget presentation and possible solutions. We have staff and community input meetings. Those meetings will be taking place over the course of the next week and a half. We have another board presentation that's scheduled for the 24th, where we will be bringing forward budget solutions and another presentation. We will need some board action at that point in time, heading into the board presentation on March 9th, which is where we're not only going to be presenting the second interim, but we will have to be identifying and codifying the layoffs that we have coming. So let's talk for a second about the cost of the tentative agreement. We've been running these numbers here internally, We have some consultants who have come in and they have also taken a look at the numbers. We have then triangulated that with the Contra Costa County Office of Education. And what they now have is they have full and direct access to our entire financial system so that they can look and run numbers the same exact way that we would in order to try to make sure and double check what we were seeing, and then of course responding to their concerns, because at some point in time we will be bringing AB 1200 forward with the tentative agreement, and they are going to need to make comments on that before it does come to the board. And that's why we're working really, really closely with them. We do want to make sure that everyone understands that when we start getting into some of these next slides, there is certainly some tightening up to do, but we just spent another hour and a half with the county office verifying some of our numbers today, and that's what you'll be seeing in some of these slides. So the cost of the tentative agreement right now and the Me Too clause for all of the bargaining groups also includes CalSTRS and CalPERS increases, and it is based on our first interim numbers. So with that said, the cost of the tentative agreement is approximately $14.9 million. This is a really small slide. So board members, what I did was I gave you a one page of this one. For the members of the public that are here, there are copies back there as well, because there's really no way to talk about this and try to put it on multiple slides. And I'm going to have Mika jump up.
Before we do it, could I?
Absolutely.
Would you mind going back one slide for a moment, please? And so I just want to make sure that people understand that the 14.9 million is our ongoing cost. That's the annual increase once the contract is fully implemented. Is that correct? That it would be an increase of 14.9 million from where we previously were at 2021. It's an annual increase of 14.9 million ongoing, correct? Great, thank you.
So this is showing the multi-year projection. The left, we start with 1920 based on the first interim, and 2021. These are all based on first interim. But the first 1920, we have first interim number, the first column. That's how it was at the first interim. And the second column shows once we implement the tentative agreement, then how it's going to look based on the first interim. You see that the net change, it was 27.6 million deficit spending, it becomes 37. And moving forward, so ending fund balance, we estimated 1920 ending fund balance to be 21 million, but after the ongoing percentage increase, it's going to be 11.8 million. So after the 3% reserve, we will have 264,000 negative. And moving forward, 2021, the first column is with the raise, how it will look based on first interim. But then we did next column to show our budget reduction will have effect, how it will look when we implement the budget reduction. And we estimated the reduction to be 22.5 million. And when we realize it, you see it, the second column in the expenditure. Our expenditure will drop to 363 million. So we are trying to get out of deficit spending, which is creating many problems. So once we get out of deficit spending, we will have enough ending fund balance to make the 3% reserve. And then going forward, you see in the 2022, the last column, you will see the with raise, and also when we implement the 22.5 million budget cut.
So it's also important to note that these calculations were based on our adopted budget, they're based on our unaudited actuals, our first interim report, as well as our tentative agreement. So of course the question comes in, because if you take a look at the bottom two columns that are under the yellow, what you're going to see is they're not zero. So if we just have 3% in reserves, those numbers on the bottom would be zero. And what we wanted to explain is why we are building a reserve that is slightly higher than 3%, which would get you zero in those bottom lines. First of all, our COLA could be reduced. So that's something that we need to consider. Our enrollment projections could come in lower than expected. And the challenge with that is that, if we had 100 fewer students coming in next year, we still have teachers, we still have principals, we still have all of that other support staff without that money coming in. So that's the impact that being off on our enrollment projections could have. Our special education costs could increase. Our benefits can increase. Our utility prices could go up. Our insurance prices can certainly increase. And our pattern with workers' compensation claims could change as well. So we're working with these numbers at this point, but it also does at least give us some opportunity for, once we start the next school year and we find out where our enrollment is and what some of these costs are, it does give the board an opportunity to then let us know where they would like to restore programs once we get to that point.
And just one thing I would add is that what's not up there is the fact that we've had 10 plus years of economic growth, and at some point our state will be poised for a downturn, and we have a highly cyclical budget, which is tied very closely to things like stock options and compensation. And so a stock market that's at an all-time high contributes to what the state gives us, and if the stock market takes a 10 or 20% correction, that could hugely impact the state budget, and that would trickle down to our school district as well.
Those are points that we will be adding to future presentations.
Can I ask a question on the previous slide? Sure. I'm trying to get let me just start with what I can see here. So in the middle of the 2021 first interim, you notice that the, just in that first column before the raises, right, is the ending fund balance is a negative 10 million, right? Or no, is that one different? Oh no, that's right. Ending fund balance is 10,608,000, right?
Correct.
I can see it better on here. So that becomes the beginning fund balance of the next year, right? So I was trying to make that same thing happen between 1920 and 2021, and I don't know what I'm not getting. So in other words, shouldn't the ending fund balance of, the beginning fund balance of 2021 match the ending fund balance of 1920 somehow?
That's a good point.
It's with the raise, I guess. So.
It looks like they took the one with the raises, but.
So maybe then.
So the first 1920 column, it shows the original first interim, and the second one is with the raise, but future years 2021 it shows
without. Okay,
with
raise
raise and
reduction.
reduction.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't see the little O there. So okay, perfect.
So what is the bottom line right now? The bottom line right now is that we are looking at approximately $22.5 million in cuts. I want to be very clear that within the next coming weeks, there are a number of things that could impact this number. For example, there are vacant positions that the board will be acting on tonight, vacant positions that we are looking to eliminate, which means ongoing expenses are reduced. The retirement incentive, we would see a 1-year bump on that, but the retirement incentive would impact this number. Continued movement, and so we are working with the county office to see if there are any other ways that we can take a look at both our restricted and our unrestricted and move any of the expenses in unrestricted legitimately over to restricted. That's an option. The board, there will be reductions coming forward at the next board meeting, so whatever the actions are there. And then at the same time, we're kind of toggling in this really weird time because we're waiting for our second interim report to be completed and the county office take a look at that. So that will also be impacting some of these numbers. The next piece that we want to share has to do with the process, and some of this is already rolling, but we do have it on here, and we want to be really transparent about everything that we're doing. So the first thing is that we had approximately 1,125 individual survey responses. So we took a look at that, and we've put that into some of the slides that you're going to see next. Our executive cabinet took a look and tiered a number of the reductions, and then we put that out to the administrative council and got their input very, very late this afternoon, which is why you heard some people talking about tiers, and we have since adjusted that based on their input, because we really want to be as transparent and get as much feedback, but our feedback loops are just right on top of each other at this point. We would like to get tonight more board input for further reductions, solutions based on the tiers that we're going to be sharing in just a few minutes, as well as anything that you think we haven't taken a look at. From there, we will be taking a look at sort of all of the suggestions and trying to quantify them, because right now they are listings and we need to know what the numbers are behind all of those. The staff and community forum meetings, we will have another round of input that is part of that as well, but those meetings will be taking place next Tuesday and Thursday, as well as a number of groups that will be getting presentations based on the information we shared at the special board meeting. We will have recommendations to the board from the executive cabinet, and then the board will be meeting to take action on this within the next 2 weeks. So here is where the core and the tiered solutions come in. And this is a very difficult process, because what we did was we went back and took a look at all of the survey responses we received and the concrete suggestions for program or position reductions. We did not, while we took a look at and we really sort of vetted for you, if you will, some of the solutions in ways to generate revenue, even if we started working on that right away, we cannot necessarily see any of that materialize right away. So even if we said, we want everybody's doors to be shut, that we're not heating the outside, if you will, we won't see anything marked with that anytime soon. So this is the way that we did it. First of all, we took a look at the core programs. And the core programs really have to do with students in classroom. These are the components that are already bargained that we know exist as part of our core programs. Even things like professional development, because some of our groups have bargain components in there. So that is considered part of our core program. Vice principals, counselors, CalPAD support, alternative school deans. And then what we've done from there is we have taken tiers out. So we have 4 tiers of possible suggestions here. It may be that the board decides it wants to act on things in core program. It may be that they want to take a look at everything tier 3 or tier 4. So we tried not to necessarily put a lot of judgment, but we really tried to keep cuts as far away from students as we possibly could with some of these. So what you'll see in tier 1, librarians, a number of positions, full day kindergarten, you can go right down the list, AVID, night custodians, our TOSAs and our coaches, athletic directors, iReady, different departments, alternative schools, counselors, secretarial time, bilingual programs, equity, and budget reductions across each department.
So, I'm sorry, when you talk about tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 and core, are you saying that like core is the closest to the classroom, tier 1 is like the next closest to the classroom, and kind of going out from there? Is that
It's, again, given the time constraints that we have, it's not an exact science.
Right.
And again, the misnomer is that some people might see core and not see, well, where are the teachers? Where is the principal? And so these are things that have come up through this idea of collecting survey data. It doesn't mean everything. We are not defining the base program in the core section. But what we've done is looked at, again, almost in a thematic way, we received these 1,125 input pieces and the collective data. And now we're kind of grouping themes, so we're seeing it together. Because again, or else you have a list of 1,000
This is
things.
the feedback that you've
This is
received
the
so far
feedback
from the
we're
online
receiving.
survey and the
We're
different
trying to
meetings.
understand it. Again, as Lisa said, even within a few hours, things have changed because we've gotten some more clarity or information. So we're seeking to just completely understand these different components. No judgments have been attached right now. It's just so we can try and understand it. As we start now putting dollars and quantifying, again, it's not that we have any intention to say we shouldn't have vice principals, but we will quantify the number of vice principals we have. Then, as we go through, we might say, well, we absolutely need this at the high schools. What do we need at the middle schools? Should we continue to have at the elementary schools? That's where now the quantification of these different things, getting that back to the board. So again, some of these decisions about which levels would we have, which level of service will we have, and again, the impact on our budget. We have to understand the value of the dollar value of these different aspects.
So are you saying that in the feedback, people were prioritizing tier 1 over
No.
tier 2, 3, 4?
They were not.
No,
We
no,
were in
no.
essence looking at the data pieces that we were receiving, and again, just as a way to start this filtering and sorting process, putting it closer to what our students are, which areas are maybe we believe to be a little bit more connected to the students, but it's not an exact science at this point.
Through the chair, could you explain what full day kindergarten, what was the thought there? Does that save us money, or are they saying, I'm confused what the money piece would be?
So again, somebody has suggested, let's take a look at full day kindergarten. What we know is that we have not made a formalized decision as a district or a board to say all of our kindergartens will be full day. We left a lot of decisions up to our school sites with those that really the educators involved at those school sites to make decisions. So some are in a full day, some are not. The examination here is that somebody said, consider full day kindergarten. So again, it didn't come with a lot of context. We're trying to understand. We will go in and determine, is that, again, something what we would do as a district overall, or we simply leave it alone right now? Making one decision or another could create more cost for us, and so we have to be mindful of that.
Thank you.
So may have missed a piece here. Tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is the higher priority to keep as far as the survey said, and which has the lowest priority?
Okay, so we didn't ask anybody to prioritize. It was an open question.
Right.
And then what we did was we wrote all of the feasible suggestions up on a wall, if you will, and we started grouping them.
Okay, so the placement of elementary, night custodians wasn't based on the number of suggestions. It may have been one suggestion, but as a group, as an administrative look at it, you placed it in tier 1.
Correct.
Okay.
And the next part of what will happen will be to, again, confirm through our data and our budget, how many night custodians do we have? What's the cost of that? What's the service delivery that we're receiving on that? Right now, some might say, we don't have enough. Some might say, where can we reduce? So some of the decisions that we'll look at will be right-sizing decisions. Some will be making those difficult decisions to say, well, if we're not going to have 10% more, what does that look like? And we'll have to, kind of grapple with those decisions.
So can you explain tier 1, 2, 3, and 4? What is the sense behind that?
Again, it's not a well-defined process at this point because we're moving very fast. However, in the overall sense of our application, some of these things were, well, we must have these things. The tier 1, we really probably need this. Tier 2, it might be nice to have. And tier 3, I wish we could do this. I mean, so it's almost in that sense of the fours are more so things that we need to look at probably first to see if there's some reducing, some right sizing, some reductions that might happen. But again, there's fluidity here. It's
Right.
not set in stone.
So as you're doing further analysis, something may either slide down or move up, or move across, or however we want to term it.
If you would like those to move, yes. So what I don't foresee is, I don't foresee quantifying all of these and then having you say, okay, we're going to eliminate everything in 4, we're going to eliminate everything in 3, and we're going to eliminate part of 2. It could very well be that you take a look at core programs and you say, you know what, there's something in there that needs to be adjusted, and there are 10 people at $100,000 each, and we're going to reduce by 1 position. So what we have here, tiers 2, tiers 3, and tiers 4. So I think a really good example is furniture. You know, furniture is something that we always need. If there is a way to significantly reduce our furniture budget, that's one of the recommendations that we would put on here and try to quantify that so that you could see what the impact is to try to help us get to that $22.5 million.
So everything that's on any of the tiers is something that somebody suggested we could look at to potentially reduce our budget.
Correct. And there are a number that our administrative team came up with as well. There are also some that didn't make it on this list. For example, doing away with transitional kindergarten, right? We know that that is a mandate, and we know that that's something that we cannot do. So for us, there was really no point in ever putting that on one of these tiers because that is not an option.
Can I ask a question? That was my question, going to be if there are things that you know didn't make sense to put on. So I'm curious about adult education, since that's funded not out of this budget. What was the rationale for putting that on?
So we took a lot of the options that were there. What we need to do is we need to delve into the adult education budget and see if there's anything there that we can reduce. And it may very well be that the answer is no. So let me move on to a couple other slides, and then certainly I'm sure the board is going to have some discussion to take place. We know that we have a number of meetings that are upcoming. We have an opportunity for staff input to see not necessarily this presentation, but a different presentation. Those will be taking place next week. They will be on 2 different days, 5 different times than anybody who is on our staff can attend. We have the same thing for community and parents. You'll see the 3 times that are there for our larger forums that will be taking place next week. On top of that, we did get student input, so we worked with the 10th and 11th grade instructors and the principals. We provided students a copy of this, and what we felt like the fastest way to get their responses were to have teachers have a led conversation, and so we could see that there were, you know, the way that some of those surveys came in, it certainly was a number of students that were weighing in. The other option, which was not possible to do in the time, was to give them a link to the survey as well as to give them hard copies and then take all the hard copy responses and input all of those. So we did not do it that way. We also want to make sure that we've been asked for transparency, and we're trying to do this as much as possible. So if you go to the district website, there is a page that's called Budget Solutions. You can see it right on the front landing page. When you go into that, what you really see is the item on the left-hand side. And so every single presentation that's taking place so far, as well as tonight's presentation, those are all up there. You can click on budget survey results, and what you're going to get in that is you're going to get all of the suggestions that came forward for reductions as well as revenue. And the reason that it looks the way that it is because our website has to be not only ADA compliant, but you have to be able to translate it, which means that every single one of those pages has all of the content that's on there. And so huge kudos to not only Austin, but to Josh over in our technology department and the team there for taking all of this information and putting it up online so that everybody can see almost every single response. The one thing that we did do is if there were individuals by name that were being called out or anything that was offensive in any of these surveys, we removed those. The other thing we did is if people wrote, I don't know, or I have no comment, or they left it blank, we did take that out too because it was taking a whole lot of space. So we took the opportunity to do that. But other than that, whether it's typos that you'll see, whether it is statements that might not make any sense, that is how we got it, and that is how we processed it. So with that said, we will go back to board discussion, all the way to the very end. Unless there's a specific slide you would like to see.
Lisa, prior to the board getting to their discussion, if I could, I just wanted to again acknowledge the work that's happening right now from our fiscal and services department. It is never an easy feat to try and gather this much data this fast to ensure the transparency that we're trying to put out there to our public. And again, our team is doing an admirable job in doing that. To our public, again, as we look to solve some of these problems, we will look to make reductions. We will look to increase revenues that are sustainable. And while we often say, again, let's keep cuts away from the classroom, everything we do is targeted on making an impact in that classroom, everything, so that we can help our students grow. As we go through this process, we must ensure truly that our systems are designed with the efficiencies to support us in tracking and monitoring each and every dollar that is intended to support our students in their journey towards a fulfilling, effective education. We must work together to find the solutions so that we can all have an understanding of what it is and then implement it together. This is no easy feat here. We're in essence looking at another 6% of our overall budget to do some reductions and some changes. We need to find strategies that we can implement, solutions that maintain our primary objective of educating all of our students. Tonight we've examined some data, and we're going to continue to do that to make sure that we're as transparent as we can be in examining all of our options as a district. I ask that as best we can during these conversations, during our work and future board meetings, we model truly for our students good listening skills, true collaborative process, and strive to understand each other's perspectives. While we might debate on items and perspectives as we go through this, I'm working to remember, and I know you will as well, that we all do want what's best for our students collectively. I do believe that. So I just wanted to make sure and have that out there to the board and to our public.
Thank you for that. Prior to board discussion, I do have one comment card, which is from Dan Reynolds, and I would, before we go to Mr. Reynolds, I would say if anyone, there is board discussion, but this is also yet another opportunity for community input. So if anyone else in the public would like to submit a comment card, we'd be happy to accept them. So, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you. In my comments at public comment, when I asked you all to consider looking backward at what happens with your budget, instead of just what you were looking at as a current snapshot, here are some examples of what that means. If you look at last year's budget information, at your budget adoption, you anticipated revenue of $357 million last year. At your first interim snapshot, you anticipated $362 million, but by the end of the year, you had received $379 million. I believe your revenue will be higher than what you're seeing at your first interim now. Also, when we look at your budgets from last year, 18-19, you budgeted $35.5 million for services and other operating expenses, but ended up spending $41.1 million. You might find savings by not bringing in expensive outside contractors you don't need. When you look at last year's salary picture, For the Medea certificated salaries and other certificated salaries, you budgeted $167 million. You only spent $160 million, which means the things that crafted your budget deficit last year didn't end up being your people. Also, looking at last year and this year, books and supplies last year at budget, so when this is June of 2018, when you were crafting your 18-19 budget, you budgeted $12.268 million for books and supplies. At first interim, that number had jumped to $24.178 million. But by the time the year ended, you had only spent $13.278 million. If you look right now at the budget numbers you're seeing tonight, and compare them to the adopted budget. The 1920 adopted budget for books and supplies was $9.5 million. It currently shows that you anticipate spending this year $23.581 million. That number is similarly astronomically high compared to what you actually spent and what you budgeted at this point last year. You want to find $13 million of savings, you realize that you're not going to spend $23 million on books and supplies this year. Even if you do what you did last year and spend $1 million more than you budgeted and only spend $10.5 million on books and supplies this year, that right there is $13 million of your deficit gone. So in talks of potentially cutting $22 million, if you look at your historical spending and what it means for just your books and supplies line, you can find $13 million right there that can fix things. So please be intentional. Look backward and look at the information that you've got. Look at your cycle to understand that just one snapshot is not every dollar you're going to see, and that if you make $22 million in cuts based on that, you're going to make cuts you don't need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Do we have board discussion, board comments, board questions?
I mentioned the last time, and I didn't see it anywhere up there, is the amount that we are receiving from all the daycare facilities that are on our sites. We should look at that. That could be a source of income.
Yes, that is something that we're taking a look at as all of our facility use. I believe we had shared some of that, but yes, there are different things happening, so that is one of them.
Thank you.
Other board comments or questions? From my perspective, I think that budgeting, there are always trade-offs, and you always it's an opportunity to articulate what your priorities are. This board for the last year and a half had heard consistently from our community that making sure we were paying our employees more was a priority. And this board listened to that and felt that was an important thing to do. That in order to remain competitive, in order to, in some ways, keep up with the cost of living, which frankly, the agreements we signed still don't keep up with the cost of living when you look at the increases in healthcare, when you look at the increases in housing here in the Bay Area. They still do not need to do that. And we were often asked, why did the board not quickly move to an agreement? And the board's position was that there would be trade-offs, and we needed to make sure that we could afford financially what we were going to do. And we've arrived at agreements, which I think every member of this board and every member of the superintendent and council are eager to move forward with, but needing to do so in a manner that allowed us to stay certified by the county board. So I think that we have to now look at our choices. It is incredibly important that this is a transparent process. I think that last year, in regards to the cuts that were made and the way that was rolled out and the impact at some of the schools from a staffing standpoint, it was not well done. I think every member of the board has expressed that concern to the superintendent, who I think has heard it loudly and clearly and is approaching this to make sure that we do cut with a scalpel and not an axe wherever possible, and that we don't exacerbate the situation and make it worse. I think that we also have to acknowledge that with decline in enrollment, that does mean we need to continue to look at administrative staff and where we can reduce there, because in a smaller sized district, you need to have a smaller administrative staff. And so that is one of the first places we look, and I think we will continue to look there. And so we need to recognize that, because we do want to, as the superintendent said, keep cuts as far away from the classroom as possible, but recognizing that many of the roles outside the classroom are there to support the classroom and support our students, and that there are core basic functions that we do have to have, but I think we need to look there for those reductions. So there will be difficult choices, but it's also an opportunity to look at what are this, as we always should, what are the programs that best impact our student outcomes and our students who need the most assistance, and make sure that they're focused towards that. So do we have any other board comments? You just got my board report in advance. So.
I just wanted to say thank you to the superintendent and staff that put all of this together. I think I really appreciate the transparency, the way that you're putting all of the comments out there on the website. You've got the numbers up there where everybody can see it. It's not easy to look at any of it, but the fact that we are being fully transparent, I think, is absolutely the right way to go. And we're continuing to collect input in a lot of different ways, in different languages. Just want to, really appreciate that that's how the process is rolling out so far. And I would say, in terms of what we're looking at, there were comments about the management staff at the district level having grown over the past 6 years. We could look at it that way. I think another way we could look at it is also just, really focusing on what our students need and what support our teachers need, and our staff needs out of the schools, and then design from there what does the district administration need to look like in order to provide those services that are needed. So that's definitely a place to look. So.
What's important for me is to understand some of the terminology that's including here, and seeing if there's any items that are similar, because budget reductions across each district is in 1 and 4, those sorts of things, and then perhaps there's some that are the same thing, or they may be actually completely different items. And I guess the other part is presumably we will receive some sort of comments about the number and or the direct impact to students or programs. My experience has been sometimes when we have eliminated administrators or something that is defined as removed from the classroom, someone still has to do that work. And sometimes that work then rolls down to the school site, which impacts the work that that person does at the school site. So I just think we need to be thoughtful, because one person might be able to do most of the work for all the schools versus every school site picking up a piece of it, if that makes sense. I mean, it's just the compilation of all of our site plans, or all of the emergency plans, the disaster plans. Somebody has to put all that together. If you eliminate the administrator that does that at the district office, how will that work be accomplished? So there is a cost. So I will be looking at things like that as well.
That question, one of the things on here says modified year-round calendar. Is that kind of intriguing, but we don't know anything about that. I'm not sure how it's
more cost effective.
And we don't have much time since we got the calendar on tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
Now. I think one more thought would just be when you're looking at things having to do with facilities or safety, for us to look at our Measure J funds and what our plans are for spending that, because those are dollars that exist for us. How are we prioritizing, particularly around safety?
And then we still have income from Measure A, which should help with some furniture purchases, excuse me. Unless we're all using it, we're using all of it in construction. There used to be a Fund 12 and a Fund 10.
I think also looking at iReady and assessment, research, and evaluation, I see those both under Tier 1. I think one of the things that we need to really think about is if we have a reduction in total staff, what are the assessments that we're using that are most effective, and not having additional assessments that are required across the board. We've heard and seen in some of the SPSA reports that in certain schools, in certain situations, some tests don't work, like they're not actually using the results of it, but they're required to do it because currently that's a requirement. So reducing the workload and also the cost of having that particular test in that particular place could be an area where we really improve and streamline.
We have counselors at all 3 levels, right? So I don't know that, I'm not advocating for that, but I think we shows up on here in some places at certain levels, but and I think someone said already, I don't think it should just be like, just cut everything, but be thoughtful about wherever it needs hyper creator or something, but
if I could, the issue of counselors, the issue of social workers, the issue of behaviorists, the issue of school psychologists, we have a number of folks who work kind of within the mental health realm and on a continuum of services for our students. The important structures that we'll be doing outside of just looking to reduce are ensuring, again, that we have a well-defined process for those levels of service that are meeting the needs of our students. If we have a continuum, which I think we'll continue to have, but it's focused in making sure that it's aligned, it may be that, again, I've used that word right sizing, but it's really correctly identifying a process that's trying to meet the needs of our students. It's, again, very difficult to determine that we will always be able to meet all of the needs of every one of our students in this arena for mental health, but we have to have a continuum that says this is what we're striving to do and have access to students. But it may not be we can provide individual counselors for every student. That's too big of a challenge. But that kind of thoughtfulness is what we're looking for, not just reducing one area and then having services that are not getting to students or not having the services that students need.
And also, our summer school has been greatly reduced already, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other board comment or questions? All right, we'll move along to board reports, and I will start with Ms. Mayo. Nobody's ever happy when I pick them. If you want, I'll go first. I pass.
Yeah.
Ms. Mayo.
You are good at passing. You gave it.
Yeah.
Well, several of us went to some of the city events for the Concord City State of the State, and then also the Pleasant Hill State of the State address. And the Pleasant Hill one included information from the Pleasant Hill Rec and Park District, which is a separate entity in Pleasant Hill. And of course, I'll do a plug for those folks that are from Pleasant Hill. Please vote yes on Measure A because it will improve our parks and facilities throughout the district. They've managed their funds well, in my opinion. On January 30th, we had the budget presentation with Dennis Myers presenting, and there were a lot of questions, and he provided many answers. That was the best part of the presentation, I think, was the question and answer sharing. On January 31st, Ms. Cowden and I attended the Gun Violence Prevention Forum. That was an outstanding event, and I think that for those folks that feel helpless, there are things that can be done that can change the environment and help protect more students and families and individuals throughout our communities. We went to the Community Advisory Committee meeting on February 4th and for special education. The presentation was around navigating school transitions, and then I wanted to share out that there is a program that will be presented on March 3rd here at Dent Center at 7 p.m. on dyslexia. So anyone who is interested in knowing more about dyslexia, I strongly recommend that you attend that event. All of us went, perhaps not President Lawrence, to the Best Business and Education Shadowing Together for Tomorrow. This is its 22nd year, and I was at the first one, and I was at this one. We really need to appreciate our ongoing sponsors, and the continuous ones have been John Muir Health, Marathon, Corteva, which was Dow, and Eichley Engineers, and the Concord Chamber. And some new partners for our teachers to visit the workplace were Innovative Genomics. I'm not going to be able to say it. Oh gosh. It's Genetics, it's Genomics Institute, and Industrial Light and Magic. I think all of us would have liked to have gone to that one. And there were other new businesses this year. And today, that was today, right, Mrs. Cowan? We went to the Climate Change Professional Development Session. And that was something that's near and dear to my heart. And it was exciting to see the number of individuals that were excited to be involved in discussions with their peers around the instruction that they might deliver to students. Thank you.
So I can primarily just say ditto, I think, on everything. The only thing I'd add is January 29th was a budget advisory committee, and I really am hoping that that committee will be able to provide some additional support to this process and another opportunity to, kind of get input and provide leadership really around the budget challenges. So, yeah, I mean, everything she said, I didn't go to everything she mentioned, but they're the same thing, so I won't repeat them. Thank you.
Yeah, I could do ditto again for the mayor's conferences and the budget meeting. I did go to the Best. I thought it was really cool that one of the companies was Henkel that was at the Best, and they're a Bay Point industry. And I just want you to know, anytime you fly, that plane is held up together with adhesive from Henkel, and the rivets are fake. They're not doing anything. People want to see them so they feel safer. And now, this year, they're going to be providing adhesives for trains as well. And they hire local kids. We have a couple of graduates from our district that are working there, and they make a good wage. The other event I went to was the Real Food presentation that Dominic Machi gave, and it was very impressive, talking about how we're moving forward. And I just think it's important to remember we have some tough decisions to make this year and things to look at, but we also have things that are happening that will continue to happen, like are happening in food services, that we can be proud of and go around and tout to the community as a positive change we're making in the lives of kids still. And we will continue to do it. Hard times, but I was born and raised in Bay Point. We have lots of hard times, and we come through better on the other side. So that's my report.
All right. I had a few additions to those. There was a vape presentation at YB High PTSA by Laura Custodio from Monument Youth Alcohol and Drug Coalition. And what I'm excited about with her is that she gives presentations in English and Spanish, and this is the group that worked in the city of Richmond to convince the city to ban the sale of vape devices and flavored tobacco, which also the city of Dublin has just passed as well. So they started a Facebook group called Mount Diablo Community Against Vaping. So if you're a parent, student, a community member who's interested in convincing our cities within the Mount Diablo School District to take this action, you can join that Facebook group and or invite her to come to any meetings, and she can present in both languages. So that's pretty exciting. Because once again, the FDA, CDC, and California Department of Public Health have all urged everyone to quit vaping altogether, no matter the substance or source, because of the lack of safety of those devices. The gun violence prevention forum was amazing. It did remind me that the county has a full-time, we're so lucky in Contra Costa that our county office of ed has a full-time coordinator for Sandy Hook Promise. They would like to implement those programs in every high school and middle school in the county. I don't know where we are on that. So if your school hasn't done it yet, just know that's out there. And then there's also a local volunteer group that speaks to any parent group, so you can invite them to your PTA, the BeSmartForKids.org, that really talks to parents about how to safely store guns. Let's see. The one thing from Best Day that I wanted to say is that the teachers who visited Industrial Light and Magic, one teacher said, I don't know what Python is, but they kept saying everybody should know Python. You guys know what Python is? You know, it's a snake. It's a computer language, and yes, everybody should know it. So let's work on that. And they also said their interviews include group games and challenges to see how people interact with each other and solve problems. So those things that our teachers are doing around collaboration really is real for the workplace. So that's pretty cool. On Saturday, I did go to the student-led immigration fair at Oak Grove Middle School. It was really impressive. They did all the outreach for this immigration fair, and the parking lot was packed. I had parked like way down the street somewhere. Stand Together Contra Costa had over 50 legal consultations, and Monument Impact was there. And there was a group that I hadn't been aware of called Immigrants Rising that has scholarships and college information for students and of no matter your immigration status. So some really great information out there. Lastly, the Fund Education Now Week. I know all of us were active, and thank you, Superintendent Martinez, for all of your work on that. I know a lot of people have called, but it's not too late. You can call every day, even when Fund Ed Now Week is over. Governor Newsom's phone number is 916-445-2841. Let him know that, this study that said that adequate funding would be $25 billion more than we have in our schools right now is real, and we're feeling it, and we're not the only ones feeling it, right? So they really need to, they can choose to act at any time to significantly fund education. And one last gratitude piece from this morning. I just want to say thank you to all the teachers and employees out there who, do innovative things and connect with other people and create things like project-based learning. I met a teacher today at the professional development, Katie, a science teacher from El Dorado Middle School. Every year she gets free redwood tree greenhouse kits from an organization called Trees for Little People. And they will give you as many as you want for your classroom every year. Little redwood trees that you can plant. And she said that over the last few years, their class has donated or planted over 400 trees already. So along with the study of climate change, of course. So it's just, no matter, like you were saying, no matter what we're facing in terms of budget cuts or things like that, I know we have so many hardworking people out there that are really making a tremendous difference all the time. So thank you.
I'll simply say I'm going to be on an airplane next week, and I'll be contemplating the fact that it's held together by adhesives, but hoping that it was MDUSD graduates who put those adhesives on the plane. So outside of that, I'll thank the other board members for.
But they also did my husband used to work there.
Yeah.
They also did not when he was pregnant, the adhesives that put this space shuttle in the tiles back.
But the tiles were the problem, not the adhesive. They've assured me of that.
It was work in progress, so it got better.
Hopefully I'll see you all in a couple weeks. So we will now move along to the review and potential approval of committee assignments. So thank you to the board members for sharing this. We just wanted to, this is not something that actually requires a vote, as I understand it, but rather for public information. Here are the ones. I did make one mistake, which is, well, at least one that I know of. Please inform me of other ones. I had spoken to Ms. Durkee about the possibility of my replacing her on the Parent Advisory Committee, but that's not reflected here. I can get that updated. And so we will republish this in 2 weeks with that one change, unless there are other changes that any other board members have. All right, then I thank you for your service and ongoing commitment to working on these committees to represent the board and to hear from the public. And we will move along to the superintendent's report.
Really, just a couple of things I wanted to mention. Again, last week we did have our historically black colleges and universities attend Mount Diablo High School. We had a number of students there. We had students coming in from across the district as well, and they were, in essence, providing admittance to students right on the spot. And seriously, some big scholarships awarded to our Mount Diablo Unified School District students. It was really amazing to have some students there who maybe are counselors, maybe are teachers, maybe their parents have said, you can get to college, you can get to college. And then when it became real, that reviewing their transcripts and the college advisor saying, you're in to our school. We want to also help you live here at school and pay part of your tuition. It was just an amazing opportunity. So I know Brian Brown, one of our counselors out there, helped kind of coordinate and organize this with a number of people. So it was just a great experience. I did have the opportunity to attend a couple of STEM nights last night, 2 on the same night, over at Sequoia Elementary School and Pleasant Hill Elementary School. And again, just the excitement of our students who are being able to participate in that activity and the great questions. The great questions that our students are thinking about, associating science with their life, and really just a great experience at both of those schools. I know that we're building towards kind of the district-wide science event, and so a lot of students are involved out there, and it's just really wonderful to see. I did want to mention again tonight, I've said this a few times, but Silverwood Elementary School is being recognized as a California Distinguished School today in Anaheim. That's kind of a big deal, people, so yes, salute to them. Julie Johnson is down there. And again, our board, did have a meeting tonight. We decided, well, let's let them go, and we did receive a little bit of support from the county office to help them as well. So that's a really nice acknowledgement. Today, again, a few of the folks have mentioned the professional development. I was able to get out to see many of our educators together working on AVID protocols, learning about trauma-informed practices, working on reading and integrating students, engaging high school students in reading process. And it's so important that, again, as our educators connect, collaborate, those things that, again, we've heard about at the best, to see them doing that today is a great opportunity. And again, we will have another professional development day in March. This was focused primarily on our secondary students, our secondary teachers. Our elementary staffs were working as a staff, and then we kind of flipped this in March. We do not have school this coming Friday or the following Monday, so no school on February 14th or 17th. And I think I'll stop there.
I just say one more thing. The HBCU fair was awesome, and I learned there that last year was the first year we had it in our district. Is that right? That our students had been going to Antioch before, so it was really exciting to see it happen in our district and all of the students from all different schools. It'd be great to see that really grow and thrive for all our students.
Great, thank you. We'll now move to the item 16.0, the consent agenda. Items under consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved or adopted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda on the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. Do we have agenda items that the board, any board member would like to remove for separate consideration?
Yes, I would like to pull 16.6.
I would like to pull 16.7 and 16.14, please.
Do we have any others other than 16.6, 16.7, and 16.14? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda with removal of items 16.6, 16.7, and 16.14.
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second, and I will call for the vote. The consent agenda passes 5-0, and we will now move to look at those items. And so we'll start with 17.1, review and potential approval of Mount Diablo High School's international hospitality and tourism class trip to Oahu, Hawaii. And so I'm presuming we have a board member wanting to go represent, but is there other discussion?
I can chaperone.
Thanks.
I mean, this sounds fascinating. I love the great places that these students have the opportunity to go to. I just was trying to understand the 16 students, and so I did email my question, and I hope you saw it. I'm not sure there'll be anybody here that can answer it, but it's just like how, it's part of an academy, a pathway, how do we arrive at these particular 16 students? Is it an opportunity open to all the students in this pathway, or is it a particular class? 16 just doesn't sound like a whole class. I'm just curious to know how that works.
Again, Michael, so we have an Assistant Superintendent, Michael Jimenez, who's going to just give us a little bit of information on this.
Yes, it is a class. It's, and it's, I can't remember the name of the course, but it is a food services class. It's a higher level class. At this time, there's only 16 kids in the course, but that is the entire class that is attending.
I was impressed about how they raised $25,000 with their giant. I knew they were selling those giant caramel apples, but I didn't know how much they raised.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I will move to approve Mount Diablo High School's International Hospitality and Tourism class trip to Oahu, Hawaii, April 2nd through April 8th, to learn about culinary arts on the islands.
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second, so we'll call for the vote. And that passes 5-0. Perhaps we can have the students sell more apples and help us out with our budget.
You're going to ask them to donate you one.
No.
That's a lot of sugar.
Don't sell them to our students.
So I ask that this item be pulled, and it's not that I'm opposed to the information or the purchase order. I am just curious whether or not the paper products include the combustible trays that we had for a number of years in the district that were corn or other products. So,
compostable.
What? Yeah, compostable.
I'm going to ask our Director of Food and Nutrition Services, Dominic Maki, to come up and answer the question.
Good evening, President Lawrence and the Board of Trustees and Dr. Martinez. Yes, we're in an evolution of change in food service, and part of that is with our new distributor Cisco that we brought in. So we're making many changes when it comes to food, but we're also trying to do the same thing with waste management, trying to find more compostable, more recyclable type material, and still make the food actually, which we've done, which has kind of put us in the situation, we made the food actually more attractive, more presentable. And so with that, so we're constantly trying to change. Actually, tomorrow I have a waste management meeting with our waste management people, as we're trying to create more ideas to more recycling, more environmentally friendly, and to try to show support to our community, because we do have certain community members out there and parents that are definitely communicating with me and my department. And as a creator of garbage, we have to be very respectful to their wishes. So.
I appreciate the fact that you're looking at product that will be attractive to students, because one of the major components of excellent food service is its how attractive it is, how enticing it is. And part of that is how it's presented. And so that's very important. And also I'm surprised Mr. Lawrence didn't pull this because of his position on paper. So, all right.
But, well, and just to kind of finish up, as we open up our new warehouse in the next school year, will give us a lot more opportunity, a lot more control to bring in those better products for us. Thank you.
On the compostable, I'm just curious, do you find it challenging to work with, because we have more than one waste management company throughout the district, right? So we're working with all the different ones to try to do composting?
We need to move us in a direction when it comes to recycling as part of the education of students and engage with our site administrators, which I know is a little bit of a challenge, but we are doing it out there. We're just consistently now trying to formalize it. At least we're having communication. We didn't have conversations before, but because we do have Mount Diablo Recovery, and we also have Republic. And knowing Republic, that they are different in every community throughout our whole district. So it's just trying to gather everybody and coming up with solutions. We're working with maintenance and operations, so we're having really great conversations. We're trying to put things in place. So working with them is great, but for us, I think it's consistently trying to find those compostable type products, because right now we have a lot of dispensable forks that are in some of our schools. It's quite a little bit of a challenge, not just yet, but to put in all 47 schools, but that is the direction we're heading. And then to remember that some forks are compostable and some forks are not. So that is an education for all of us.
Well, that's great to hear, because there's so much, we always hear student interest in, increasing recycling and composting in our schools. And so to know that that these conversations are happening at that level is wonderful. I think even this morning at the climate change workshop, they talked about how food waste is one of the major contributors to climate change across the.
So we are completely aware of it, and we are definitely engaged, and we'll move forward. Thank you.
I would just like to add the comment that the reason we initially began with compostable trays was it was a student-led initiative from Sequoia Middle School. So, and there was a point in time where we were not able to get the product any longer, but then it came back about a year later. So it's been in and out depending on its availability and probably its cost at the same time. With that, I'll move item 17.2, which is the approval for increase to the purchase order of 201046.
Second.
First and a second. Call for the vote. And that passes 5-0. I'm all in favor of compostable paper for food. I just don't need a report about it. So, all right, we'll move along to item 17.3, review and potential approval of the request to increase and decrease full-time equivalents of classified personnel.
I asked that this be pulled because I think we need a clarification of what these positions are. Whether they are positions that where individuals are currently employed or whether they're vacant positions.
Thank you for the question. So the listing of these particular positions are vacant positions for the most part. What's happening is that in the notes, somebody will be able to identify if it is a vacant position. That means there's nobody serving in that position right now. It's a position where more than likely there is budget dollars behind it. To some positions, very small amount of budgeted dollars. However, there's still dollars behind that. And when we keep a vacant position on the list, it really should be a position that we're seeking to fill and we want to get somebody employed. For many of these positions, they've been on here for a while, so we have, upon review, worked with the departments, worked with the school sites. If we do not need these positions, we're calling them, but it does not affect anybody who's physically working in these jobs. We do have a few positions where you'll see we've moved a position, reduced it, and we might have created a new one because under the new position, that's something, even though it might be reduced, we really do need. So we're going to go try and find that one. But for the most part, these are removed vacant positions.
With that, I'll move that the board adopt item, I have to get to it, 17.3 as presented.
Second.
Go ahead, Ms. Durkee.
All right, first motion by Ms. Mayo, second by Ms. Durkee. I'll call for the vote. And that item passes 5-0. We will now move along to the rest of our business and action items, starting with item 18.1, review and potential approval to accept Mount Diablo Education Foundation grant for Project Lead the Way. Do we have a motion? Or, no, first, okay. Presentation first?
There's no formal presentation. What we really wanted to make sure and do is that as we're having these types of good things happen in the district is recognize that, again, our Mount Diablo Education Foundation group is supporting us in this endeavor. We'll be bringing other items like this to you, but we thought it important because it is a grant that we actually formally move to accept this grant.
So I'm obviously very much going to support this. I just in a bigger context mentioned this a few times over last year. I think is to be great to sort of understand how the foundation decides on, just to learn more about the process. So I was happy to see this. That was, I guess in that context, what other kinds of things might come forward. I think as a board, and I don't know that we all have a comprehensive understanding of the foundation's decision-making process and identification of needs and interest. I think, I read the background information on this, and so it sounds like that the schools have been identified that have, I don't know why I'm sorry. Putting me on the spot, I have to retrain myself. That the schools have been identified, where the funding's going, and I don't know, it doesn't really matter really, but just like it's just they're going to, the staff will decide how the money gets dispersed, I assume, from that. But anyway, I just have an interest in sort of bigger pictures. This is the first time we've seen something like this from this foundation, I think, and so I would like maybe a board report on it or a presentation or something at some point.
Very well. I think, I'm kind of looking at board members saying we're happy to do that. If you'd like additional information on this, we could have somebody speak to it tonight. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to use that up
Sure.
to say that, so that's all. I'm happy to see it. So with that, I will move to approve the Mount Diablo Education Foundation grant for Project Lead the Way.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Durkee, second by Ms. Mayo. Call for the vote. Alright, that motion passes 5-0. And we move on to item 19.2. Approval, review and potential approval of CSBA recommended revisions to board policies 0420, 0460, and 6020. And Dr. Martinez, do we have an overview or a quick highlight for these?
Yeah, these have come before us once before for review. Again, in essence, they're the updates to the school plans, school site councils, the board's philosophy, goals, objectives. They're in alignment with the CSBA recommendations for local control and accountability plan. So it does provide the overall guidance to us as a district, including the third one, parent involvement. We think it's important that we continue, and again, we've talked about board policies where you have not had a number of board policies coming to you. We have to get kind of caught up in a sense, and so these are very important that we thought we want to make sure we're in alignment with CSBA.
And do we have a motion?
I would move to approve the adoption of the CSBA recommended revisions to board policies 0420, 0460, and 6020.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Mason, second by Ms. Durkee. And do we have any comments or discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. And that passes 5-0. And we will move to item 19.3. Review and potential approval of the classified job description for an accounting supervisor.
Yes, if I could, one area that we want to make sure and bring to the board's attention is that this particular position, while it is within our fiscal department, has been revised. It used to be a higher level management position, and so we're looking at structure as a supervisor, which actually does reduce the fiscal impact of this position. I think we have a precise number for reduction. If we would like to provide them that, Karen, or Assistant Director of Human Resources.
Yes, there's a reduction of 24,900 and through 30,500. Just depends on the experience.
Thank you.
I certainly support that. My ask would be if in the future, if we could add that to the agenda to show what that savings would be, that would be very helpful.
Yes, exactly.
Can you review how the responsibility changes in that level of work then?
So again, what we're doing is this is some some structural changes to the individuals within the department. So right now, again, we have a CBO. Our plan is to continue with the Director of Fiscal Services, but the work of a manager rather than a outworking supervisor is a little bit different in the sense that this person is doing some of that work as well with the team. And so there's some, I guess, some subtle changes in working with the personnel there as a supervisor rather than an immediate boss, if you will. So.
All right. And I will look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve item 19.3 to approve the classified job description for accounting supervisor.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Count, second from Ms. Durkee. Call for the vote. And that item passes 5-0. One quick comment on that. So certainly as we look at the budget, it's much appreciated when we're able to find areas. I think that we will also have instances where we may consolidate and we may see some increases. And I think one of the things from my perspective at least is having an idea of just the overall balance of that and recognizing some things may go up, but that on the whole we're looking to find areas where we can decrease across the board and understanding those trade-offs. So thank you. And now onto the exciting and scintillating topic of our 2-year, which first of all, let me say I greatly appreciate the fact that we do have 2 years worth of calendar. And again, my hope would be that Ms. Durkee and I will not be here next year, but that hopefully a calendar would be brought forward for the following year so that we have a rolling 2-year versus just simply every 2 years approving. But with that, we have 2 possibilities that have been presented. I will turn it over to the superintendent.
What the public would find is that in the board item tonight, we actually have modified or clarified a few issues or a few inaccuracies in some of the data. So again, the most current copies are available online. We also created a sheet that had some of the calendar differences so that you could individually see the structure and changes from year to year. They're very slight changes. So one has to do with, again, excuse me, I want to make sure I get this correct, in the sense of the professional development day. So from 1 week to a next, we have a little bit of a difference there. In options specifically A2 and B2, if you will, in the 2021 school year. The clarification, again, for the ending of trimesters and ending of semesters is indicated on there, and identifying the professional development days in March are a slight difference. There was some, again, captures in some of the data to make sure that the drafts were correct as far as returning in January well, there's, again, always going to be that different view. We kind of can say, well, why take that Monday off? And why? We were trying to, again, in essence, look to have a very similar calendar to these last years into these next 2 years without any dramatic changes. So, again, is it a variance without a difference to some degree, some of these calendars? But again, we look for the board to kind of give us some feedback on where you'd like us to go.
So, board questions, board comments.
You have one on the summary sheet. The 21-22 school year doesn't mention end of first trimester, so I need to look that up. Or, so the end of the first trimester would be November 5th, while the end of the first semester is December 17th.
So that's for 2020 that you're
No,
asking?
21-22.
Correct, and that's the same in both calendars. I believe it is.
I'm looking at the B2 option in the first year, which is 2021. The end of the first trimester is November 6th, and the end of the semester is the 18th.
Oh,
And
I'm
so
sorry,
then
I
it's,
misidentified here.
and then, so then it's similar in the second year. The different date difference, the duration is what I'm trying to say. There's, I guess, kids like the faster paced instruction.
Done by the holidays.
I just have a point of clarification, which is for the spring recess, it lists April 5th through 9th as spring recess, but then also lists April 9th as a board holiday. And so I'm just wondering about the redundancy it appears to be for both years and on both drafts. So I'm just wondering why the call out on that last Friday of the spring recess as being a board holiday when it's also included in spring recess.
Would you like to take it? I was going to have, it's all right. Let's see if the answers match up.
I guess it was Good Friday.
Good evening. Are we talking about the B2 option?
All of it appears to be all of the options.
Okay, and that is there is no work day that entire spring week, but it has always been a board holiday during the spring vacation.
So, I think
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so that it's actually a board holiday, so nobody can work.
Right.
People can choose to work in certain parts of the district during the spring break week,
Got it. Okay.
So then that leads me to the question about February 12th. In option A, it is a school recess, and in option B, it's a board holiday. So that's the same reasoning?
Those are the different choices. For option A, it would be a school recess. Option B, it would be a school board holiday.
And do we know anyone's preferences between those two?
We do, but I shan't say. It would be your call.
So there's people on both sides of that one, okay?
Absolutely.
We have no
I mean,
particular
I guess
feedback on that.
just that maybe a process question. I mean, I like all this is fine with me personally, so I can't really see Ms. Mayo would not one that maybe would have an impact on. But so it's I mean I was just going to figure out what everybody else heard.
I was going to go.
Make sense of the errors, and if it But other than that, I don't really have a basis.
I was gonna go with B simply because that was the kids' choice. When you read the notes on the first agenda.
yeah,
So
okay.
like if the kids want B, I'm all about B, so I would make a motion for B.
So you're talking about the notes from the previous meeting, so, okay. I wasn't sure if these calendars were different than those.
I do want to clarify those calendars, even though it was identified as having a student's perspective, it was from the student's perspective. It did not mean that every student voted on the calendar. I just wanted to make sure and clarify.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have one clarification. When, because all of the school districts and even the County Office of Education approaches the calendars a little differently. What happens with our, and I believe it may only be this one group, the paraprofessionals that ride on the buses that transport our students to the county education program. If it falls on one of our holidays, how are they compensated?
I'd have to look into that and get back to you on that.
Because they are still required to work when those students are transported to the county programs, I believe, if we're providing the transportation.
Again, a very specific question. We'd have to get to the transportation department and ensure what was happening for those particular individuals. I would hate to misspeak, but we would work with them to ensure that their calendar is matched up to usually meet the needs of those county students.
So I believe I have a motion from Ms. Mason for, I believe, option B2.
Is that correct?
All right. Do I have a second?
Second?
Can I just clarify, I mean,
Please.
are you aware of any preferences by any stakeholder group one way or the other? Or they're not that different. So
They're not that different at this point. Again, we did work closely with the team and a committee, and I would dare say that I would work closely with our Medea folks and had some significant input in what we were doing here. So
either one is acceptable, probably.
I would think so at this point.
So I'm still trying to figure this out.
I think
So
it's giving us a thumbs up over there. I don't.
Okay, because option B, it looks like the other difference, right, is that there's like an extra day of winter break essentially. It starts January 5th instead of 4th, so it ends a day later. I felt like as a parent, I didn't know why we had the Monday off. Now we got the Monday and the Tuesday. We're not starting till Wednesday, and we're ending a day later in June. Is what option B is. If I'm reading that right? Am I reading that right?
That's probably why the kids prefer it.
I think that the kids would want to get out a day later in June. I don't actually
You do get out
understand
a
that.
day later, yeah.
Yes, school ends then on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday.
Because we're not involved in the calendar discussions, I don't know whether the group looks at historical information on staff and student absences when they're determining the starts and the stops. And, when you have, depending on when your official holiday is, parents want to take a few extra days, or, even employees, impact on attendance is where I'm going for.
It is my understanding that they did look at historical data and attendance data of both students and of staff on these different days. So again, they try to work with that. And again, within any calendar, one change means a change somewhere else. And so these are why we're bringing these options forward based on those conversations.
You don't like it?
I just don't know how to make this decision because, so like the professional development days are slightly different, right? But do we know if that's our teachers that we're talking about that go to professional development days? Do they have a preference between which day the professional development is?
Right. I mean, again, they've already had those conversations. The difficulty is now.
So they're okay with both of these, really? Okay.
That's why we have a yes and a no button.
Okay.
The extra day gives families an opportunity to travel on a day that may not be so busy if they're coming home, or it gives them that extra day to do laundry before the first school day.
Okay, I will make this decision based on laundry. Okay, I got it. So you had a motion, is that correct?
There's a motion and a second, so I'm going to call for the question, which would be the approval of option B2 as the calendar for the next 2 years. All right, and we have arrived at a conclusion with a 5-0 vote on the calendar for the next 2 years. So, all right. Yes, so with that, there were no items to be carried over from closed session.
Signatures.
I didn't have anything. Do we have signatures? Okay, for the resolution, so we will
And
do that.
There were two employees that passed away.
Would you like to?
I was going to look at that right now.
One of them was Amanda Smith from Walnut Acres. Wonderful, wonderful person.
The second one was Cheryl Easterwood, who was the senior trade supervisors at M&O.
So we will adjourn the meeting in their memory, and we will go ahead and sign on tonight's resolution. It's adjourned. Thank you.